Horror has found a new home. House. Enter at your own risk.
Welcome back to Horror on Tap. If you are still watching at this point, I appreciate it. I have already unsubscribed from my own channel. Today I'll be checking out the 1985 film House, starring William Catt, George Wendt, and a bunch of other people. So basically we've got a haunted house movie here. We open up with this elderly lady who has hanged herself in this pretty cool old house. And then we meet Roger pretty briefly, where we discover that he was the nephew of this lady, and he assumes ownership of the house after her passing. We learn that Roger has a pretty extensive history with this house. He grew up there, spending a lot of time there, and then as an adult, we find out through a flashback scene that his son goes missing. He thinks maybe he was abducted or potentially that he drowned in the pool, but then he goes into the pool, dives in where he sees his son, and he's just not there. It doesn't take long before things really start going off the rails here. Roger walks into the living room and sees a little movement out of the corner of his eye and realizes that this giant fish mounted to the wall is moving. It's dead, it's stuffed, but it's moving. After having a few of these interactions with the undead or whatever they are, Roger tries to set up some kind of a sting, if you will. He brings a whole bunch of cameras in, video cameras, still photo cameras, all these things, and sets them up in front of this closet where this monster of a creature had come out and attacked him at one point, and he tries to actually get evidence of it. It kind of reminds me of when I was a kid and I tried to catch the Easter Bunny. Set up a trap, put some strings up, and there were bells on the end to try to make noise so it would wake me up. Well, imagine my surprise when I got up in the next morning and it had all been pretty much dismantled. I had no clue how we got through there, and I did not wake up. We get a bunch of flashback scenes from Roger's time in Vietnam. We do get to learn a little bit more about his history, but we also get to meet some characters during those scenes that will eventually become bigger players down the line. One of these characters that we see later comes back from Vietnam was the character of Big Ben, who was played by Richard Mall. He comes back as one of these sort of undead or ghost-like characters that we've been getting throughout the film, and he's got revenge on the mind after Roger essentially just ran away and left him there to die as he's being surrounded by the Viet Cong, if I remember correctly. Big Ben ultimately becomes our final bad guy for the film. You get that scene at the end where he's going after Roger and trying to take him out. Roger ends up going out this door that somehow has transitioned him to some kind of beachfront. There's a cliff in the ocean below, and he's hanging there, dangling, about to fall to his doom. And you got Big Ben there, stepping on his hands, trying to take him out. Ultimately, of course, Roger is able to make the save, takes him out instead, and our good guy ends up surviving. After all this, Roger kind of gets the opportunity to change the past, or it's almost like a Nightmare on Elm Street type of moment where he's able to save his son. He finds him finally, resurrects him from the water, which ends up coming through the pool where he originally found him, and then we get our happy ending with his son being saved. The plot's going to get a Porter rating. It really was a fairly generic haunted house type movie. Not too much additional on top of that really intrigued me that much. There were some interesting things that happened during the movie, interesting scenes that were kind of neat, but in the grand scheme of things, it really was kind of a basic haunted house film for me. So it's the plot's going to get a Porter rating. We'll move on to characters in a moment, but first, let's take a look at what I'm drinking. Sticking with 6 Point Brewery today, we've got the Piff Hazy Double IPA coming in at 8.6% ABV. It doesn't take too many of these to get you going, or not going, maybe going to the floor, but it is good stuff. All right, moving on to characters. I think they did a good job at not having too many characters in this film, and the characters that they had, a lot of them were actually really good characters. The Aunt Elizabeth character, she was really a character. Just the way her mannerisms, the way she talked, and the facial expressions and everything. She was a pretty interesting character. Not really in the film all that much, but of course plays a pretty pivotal role. Of course, you have the main character, Roger. He's an author. He's the nephew of Elizabeth, who was the lady who hanged herself in the house at the beginning. Then you got the neighbor, Harold. He played by George Wendt. He's most famous, I think, for playing Norm on Cheers. As soon as I saw him, I was like, yes, I know that guy. Hang on, give me a minute. It'll come to me. And then it was there. It just took a minute. There is Sandy, who is the ex-wife of Roger and the mother of their child. And then, of course, Tanya, who kind of makes a random sudden appearance swimming in the backyard pool at Roger's house. How come that never happens to me? I mean, I don't have a pool, but if I had a pool, that still definitely would not happen. You got Big Ben, of course, who ends up playing a pretty pivotal role as sort of our main or final bad guy at the end of the film. And then you've got a couple of characters that the actors looked very familiar to me. You got the guy who played Creighton Duke in Jason Goes to Hell. You've also got the police officer from the end of the very first Friday the 13th film. And I probably should have mentioned that this movie was produced by Sean Cunningham and also directed by Steve Miner, both very famous for Friday the 13th. Steve Miner did direct, I believe, Friday the 13th Part 2 and Part 3, and also directed Halloween H2O. So the characters category is going to get an IPA rating from me. And the main reason why is we didn't get a whole plethora of characters. We got a fairly small, kind of tight-knit group of characters. What we did get, they were pretty well-established characters. You got to know a few of them pretty well. You didn't get a whole lot of throwaway characters, and for that, I'm giving it an IPA. The kills. For the kills, I'm gonna give it a wheat beer. There really weren't many at all. I think there were like 3 or 4. You got the aunt hanging herself at the beginning. That it was well done. The execution was pretty good. You got the ex-wife Sandy, who Roger ends up shooting her, thinking that she is one of these undead, back from the grave, alien, whatever creatures, whatever they are. I still haven't figured that out. He ends up shooting her, and then Sandy, again as that monster, it comes back to life, and then gets chopped into a few pieces by these flying tools, which the effects and how they did that was actually really well done. I'll get into that here in a minute. But they come flying through the what are they, hedge trimmers or clippers, ends up taking her head off. Well, didn't really kill her. We see that here in the next scene or a couple scenes later that she's not really quite dead, but I'll still count it as a kill. So wheat beer, really wasn't a whole lot there. For the production, this one was kind of tough because there were things that I really liked, and then there were a lot of things that I didn't really care for that seemed kind of cheesy to me. Like some of the characters, the monsters and things like that, they seemed kind of cartoonish to me. They seemed like things that I'd seen in Krampus or Killer Clowns from Outer Space. It had kind of that vibe to them. So that was a little bit of a lesser quality for me. But then there were certain things like the music, classic Harry Manfredini, the monster that comes out of the closet, that looked really good. That was actually pretty damn scary when that thing comes popping out. Just the grand scheme, the feel of the movie, I thought was really well done, especially for the mid 80s. What they had to work with, whatever the budget constraints were, things like that. I thought they did a really good job with the production. So for the production, I'm actually going to give it an IPA, which might be a little high, but overall, I enjoyed the production value of the film. Just the way they filmed it, the music, the score, the Foley, the effects. The effects were actually really well done. However, they did those gardening tools flying around and first attacking Roger, and then later he opens up the door. They come flying through and cut off Monster Sandy's head. However, they did that. They did a really good job with that. I thought that was pretty fantastic. So yeah, gonna be an IPA. I think that's a pretty fair rating. I think might be a little high, maybe, but I don't think porter would have done it justice. So sticking with the IPA. So my overall rating for House is going to be a porter. Overall, the movie was fairly entertaining. Had some good stuff in it. Had a few things that I didn't really care for too much. But the production value and the characters, I thought, really elevated it a bit. Of course, you had a story by Fred Decker. You had the production by Sean Cunningham, and then directed by Steve Miner, of course. You had a really good trifecta there of really strong minds in the business that could have produced something a little bit better, I thought, but in the grand scheme of things, not everything is going to be a home run. So I think a porter rating is a good rating for this film. Fairly enjoyable watch. I get why a lot of people enjoy it, and the house itself is actually really cool. And for those of you who know me a little bit better, know me in person, you could probably understand why that would be an interesting factor for me, given my living situation, the house I live in, and its storied history. So it was a good watch, and I'm glad I did finally take the time to get this one knocked off the list. So that's it for House. Be sure to like and subscribe down below. Let me know in the comments if you agree with my ratings, and tune in next time to find out what's on tap. Cheers.